Ever show you that yet?
It's 6:30, we'll call the Sawyer County Public Works Committee meeting to order. Ask the clerk to take roll.
Ron Kinsley,
Here.
Mark Helwig, Ed Peters,
Here.
Dale Olson,
Here.
Brian Bizinet.
Let the record indicate we have a quorum. Number 3, certification and compliance with open meeting laws.
This meeting has been noticed to the public and news media as required by section 19.84 of Wisconsin statutes.
Thank you. Number 4, the meeting agenda. Let's juggle around a little bit. After number 6, let's have 8 and then 9, then we'll come back to 7, if that's acceptable.
Need a motion? Make a motion to do so.
Second.
The motion by Mr. Howard, second by Mr. Peters to rearrange the agenda as presented with the changes. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Number 5, public comment. Now, we've had some discussion with some people that are interested in talking about the airport leases. And after some discussion, if people have something that they want to present at the airport leases of letters C or D, we'll let them do that at that time. Is there anybody else that has something for public comment?
Mr. Chair, it's still 3 minutes. So.
Well, we're gonna make an exception tonight because of these leases. They're pretty involved, and I have decided that if someone wants to go over the 3 minutes, I'm going to let them so they can speak their piece so that we can have a fair shake.
Okay.
If there is such a thing. Okay. All right, nobody for public comment. We'll go to number 6. Public Works minutes from February 10th.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Howard, second by Mr. Peters to approve the minutes as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll go to number 8, Highway Commissioner's report. Welcome back.
No, thanks. Does anyone have any questions with the report? I've got a few additions, updates. As I mentioned in the report, the bids for asphalt and pavement marking were opened on February 26th. And I'd submitted, because I was going on vacation, I had submitted my stuff to Lynn ahead of time, so she had it. So the bid tabulation, which next month I will have an agenda item. I just didn't get around to doing it because, like I said, I left. But we will have an agenda item to accept the bid for that portion of County Road B. It's that MLS, the multimodal local supplement, that has to have official awards minutes that I can attach when we go for the grant reimbursement. So that'll be for next month's agenda. But just a highlight for the committee, price of oil, as everyone knows, gasoline, everything's going up. We were told to bid as soon as possible because, and I'm not going to get political, but it's because of where we're at politically, and what there's a lot of uncertainty out there. And there are people from Monarch Matthew that do this for a living. This is what they do, forecast. And they said, Gary, they actually, it was really nice. I thought it was really nice of them to call up and say, get going sooner than later. So I got it in as soon as I could. We still ended up getting nailed. Our hot mix asphalt went up. There's 4 different mixes that we bid out. The one that we went from $49.40 a ton up to $51.50. That's an increase of $2.10 a ton. We have a couple other mixes, but we don't really use them. But they range. The mix that we use went up the least amount, $2.10. The other increases were $2.15, $2.30, and $2.40 per ton. But like I said, we won't be using those other mixes. I bid them out so that we have a little latitude if we do choose to go that way. Big factor is hot mix versus warm mix. When the prices increase in oil, typically warm mix is a better alternative because of what the process of making the asphalt is, heating up the oil. That was not the case this time, so it's still cheaper for us by 20 cents a ton to go with the hot mix. The crew prefers the hot mix also.
Have a question? Joe?
I just want to make a comment. You talked about the oil prices going up last year. Down, south, 94 cents a gallon.
Prior to looking at this, oil was sitting around 30 some dollars a barrel, and things were looking real good. I think if anyone's following it, I think we're up around 63, 64, somewhere in there. That's the increase we've seen. So it gets reflected on here. So that's my bad news. I got good news. Centerline striping, the pavement marking. We've got a new company that got the DOT bid, and this is not, I don't want Tom to get this confused, because Tom, it's the name of its company is called Sir Lines-A-Lot, and Tom's always thinking about Sir Mix-a-Lot. Back in his college days, he was that Baby Got Back song. So anyway, 22 cents a lineal foot it came in at, as opposed to 0.232 for Century Fence and 0.258 for AAA striping. Typically, we only have the two firms bid us. This firm is from Edina, Minnesota, and they're starting to make their way into Wisconsin. So I think, it's with competition, and more competition, then I think next year, the other two companies are going to be fine. We've never worked with Sir Lines-A-Lot, but I did check them out, and they're good. And like I said, they got the DOT bid for our region. So then one of the last things I have is they had the bid opener was on March 9th for the bridge over the Coudray River on County Road 8. And I was really expecting the worst. I got this email, came today, this afternoon. The engineer's estimate for that bridge was $599,000. The low bid was 3% under the estimate. So it came in at $581,946.69. This is good news. So
Could you repeat that?
the bid was $581,946.69. 3% under the engineer's estimate of $599,000. And this is the bridge, as I said last month, the LCOBIA is going to be picking up the county's 20% share. So it's good all around. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And then the last thing I wanted to add on the report is on the COVID vaccinations. Last Friday, 10 Sawyer County employees received their first vaccination. 7 more are scheduled to have signed up. So a total of 17 employees have signed up. I have an 18th employee who already was vaccinated because he's also volunteer firefighter, so he's already been vaccinated. So that will be as soon as, it could be a phone call tomorrow. It could be a phone call for Friday. We don't know, but it's good news, because I've been fighting real hard, and I've basically just been banging my head against the wall. I've called down to Madison because I spoke with Julie about it. She said that we weren't in line for it, even though we were told we were critical essential employees when everything started. Then when it came time to do vaccinations, we were not included in tier 1B with the rest of the people we were included on at the onset of the pandemic. Fast forward to vaccination, we weren't included. Julia says I don't make that decision. I tried to contact, and I spent probably too much time trying to work with Department of Health Services. I never really got an answer. I only spoke with one live human being the whole time. And it's a 12-member committee that makes this decision. So there must be some surplus vaccines floating around, because I have friends of mine that have walked into Walgreens and got it too. So just to update everyone, and we've had no new cases at the highway department. So we're still working under the same guidelines that were established. So
Walmart is getting it there too. Just to let you know.
So Gary, they don't consider highway department workers, frontline workers, or
No.
essential workers?
no, and the lady I spoke with is the executive secretary for there's a 12-member board that sets this. It's a state, I can't think, SDMAC, some acronym. They're the ones that established the tiers. And while highway departments were discussed, because she told me this, while they were discussed, it was determined that they were the least essential of the essentials. Which, so you have to draw the line, they had to draw the line somewhere, but
Yeah.
like I said,
Wow.
what if we get a March storm and we get 18 inches? Because that's never happened around here
No,
before.
not at all.
But she was very understanding, and she said she would relay it on, but it didn't do anything. The only reason we're getting vaccinated is because I think, you know what Julia Lyons had told me is she had been putting in for X amount of vaccines and she was only getting this much. So she put in for I don't know, I'm just making a number. I'm saying if she put in for 20, she was only getting 75, 80, 100. So I think maybe that's been a contributing factor to us and others in our community being able to get the vaccine. So as far as I know, I've only got a handful of people, 3, maybe 4 people who have chose not to receive the vaccine, and that's their prerogative.
I got the first one.
Mr. Hub.
Yeah, just on the essential worker 1B scenario, and we had a lot of discussion with that in Health and Human Services and some other committees too. You know, the essential workers that have face-to-face contact, like educators, the teachers, those kinds of things, those were included before the highway workers, which are normally, you know, out in trucks or working amongst themselves. So there was some rationale behind it. It wasn't just you're not essential enough. There was parameters especially when vaccine was scarce. As it becomes more plentiful, you know, things will open up a little bit more. So that's good.
Mr. Peters, you have a question?
No, just acknowledging the one jab.
Okay. I just had one last one for Gary and Tom. So the BIA and the tribe came through and put how much towards that bridge on me?
I think the amount that they told me it was higher. I reported it last month, 132, 134,000.
Right. And didn't we put that in our budget for 21, just in case we had the county had to put it off?
We placed 128,000 into the budget.
Yeah. So what happens to that now that the tribe and BIA are gonna kick in?
Public Works Committee.
Goes back.
Is that right? We had it in our budget though?
Yeah.
I would hope that I could use it to offset the $2.10 a ton increase, so I could stay on
Yeah, I'm
course.
just saying.
But
I just
I mean,
remember
that's why I
that in the
said the
budget,
good and
and
the
now we're
bad.
gonna.
you know, it's kind of I know going into it, we knew this. Tom knew it, Mike Keefe knew it, we talked about it, and you know, it was never a given, and it still isn't a given. We don't have the money.
Right.
And from the BIA, but they've given us a
Just
really
committed,
strong indication that there's a very good likelihood, is what I was told from the Ashland office, very good likelihood that we will get those funds in calendar year 2021.
Okay.
Anything else for Gary? Thank you, Gary. Thank you for all you do.
Yep.
Thanks very much.
Number 9, maintenance report. Mr. Hagberg.
How you doing this evening?
Uh,
Any questions on my report at all?
No, it looks like you do a good job.
You know, and the only thing I got to add in there is, you know, it doesn't look like a whole lot on paper, but that like things like that dispatch remodel, that's gone really well. We've really upgraded with the help of Cryer Electric and Rasmussen Plumbing and Heating to really upgrade dispatch. It's not just the facial, it's We've added in a lot more electrical capacity. Plus, we were able to look at everything in the jail, and we found some things that should have been on the emergency generator that we were able to get wired on, like in the last couple of days. Now we have the elevator being picked up by the emergency generator. So, yeah, it's a lot of much needed upgrades in the dispatch center.
Thank you for pointing them other things out, too. There's some things you don't think about. What else you want to add?
Otherwise, everything else is just kind of is going along. We've been fortunate in our department. We haven't lost anybody with COVID, so we've been, through the whole thing, been able to keep everybody going for the most part. So, yeah, it's going along pretty well.
Thank you. Mr. Schuler.
Yeah, Tim, when do you expect anything to start on the Fifth Street project? As far as that water main, what is the estimated time that that's gonna start to be tore up?
I can help with that.
Oh,
Yeah, the city, I don't know, Tim, have you heard, but the city's got the bids, they did the RFP, they received bids back, and it goes to the city council. I don't know when their meeting is, but so they've got bids and they're ready to start construction as soon as they want it. Yeah.
Yep.
Question to Tom. So we're paying for it, but they're doing it? The city is doing it?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Nothing else? Thank you, Mr. Hager.
Thank you.
Now we'll move up to number 7. Letter A. We have a copy of the letter that's sent out to the airport and from the airport manager.
I can tell you that I had a lot of help just getting this letter sent out. We kind of had some drafts that we sent back and forth 2 or 3 different times, but in reference to the hangar. Lessees, last week was kind of important to try to at least get something out there, that looked official, so people had an opportunity to know what was happening. So Tom and Rebecca were pretty instrumental in helping me get this letter out, and just trying to be open and transparent with this process.
Thank you. This little letter B, manager's report.
Any questions on the
What
report?
stands out that you want to tell us?
A couple of things in particular, talk about bid openings. Gary alluded to it earlier. We got our big one coming up here for our ramp expansion project. Bids are due on the 18th. They'll be opened, I don't know if it's a couple days later than that. It'll get published on the state's website. Our project, we've budgeted for somewhere between 1.1 and 1.2 million. I think I could say that. It's in meeting minutes somewhere. So we're really hoping that the bids come in competitive. We had a bunch of people at the pre-bid conference. I had 5-6 companies just on Zoom alone, 2-3 of them trickled through in and out over the course of the week. So it sounds like there's a lot of interest in the paving parts, which is where the main GC is going to be involved. So if bids come in a little bit higher, we'll probably have a little buffer. We've never done it before, but we could eat into the $7,500 worth of entitlements that we've put aside for our 2021 budget for matching entitlements as well, which 5% divided by 7,500 is a fair amount of money. So if there is some overages on that project, we're not going to get billed out for this. It might not even be in 2021 where the bulk of the payment is due on this upcoming project. It takes the BOA a really long time to get those bills out.
Keep the administrator in the loop.
Yep. It's not on my report, but I did do a phone interview today with a fellow from Business View magazine. They're doing an editorial magazine about the Sawyer County Airport. And Tom has been read in on that, and they chose it Sawyer County because of our regional effect, the amount of people that are flying in and out of our airport. And I worked with Chris yes,
Chamber.
down at the chamber, and was able to kind of get some coaching from him in particular about some of the things to and not to say. And they're going to be sending us a draft of it, and Tom's going to take a look at it too before it gets published. But it's a reputable magazine, and certainly a good opportunity to get some good publicity about the airport, not just regionally, but the magazine that gets distributed worldwide. So,
Oh, that's great.
yeah.
And they have a circulation of like 840,000 people that'll go to. And then Visitor Bureau, I think, is placing an ad alongside the article. So people that read about the Hayward Airport will also see the ad for the Visitors Bureau and get more information.
Is that called Business View?
Business View, yep, magazine. So, otherwise, Tom Hoff and I did have a sponsor workshop with the BOA. We talked about a whole bunch of different things, just about the future of the airport and where we're at with our entitlement funding. I've been alluding to the Runway Project that's coming up in the near future. We talked about that at length. And long story short is the BOA wants to start considering consultant selection for that Runway Project this fall. It takes 3 years for these runway projects to get designed, for the funding to get in place. And runways are at the top of the list for funding. Nothing gets funded at a higher priority than runways do. But the county needs to seriously start considering what 5% of $3 million is going to look like in the year 2024. That's going to be an interesting one, budgeting for that with the way things have been the last couple of years. It is in our petition. So this committee and the County Board of Supervisors does not need to petition for that runway project and for the funds for it. We've already petitioned for it in the past. That being said, presumably we'll probably get an engineer once consultant selection is done to draft some preliminary design plans, just like we've done with this recent project, to present to this committee for review. Talk about the funding, and then Sawyer County eventually has to sign off on the acknowledgement that the Sawyer County will have the funding. Wow. It's March. I can't believe it. Sawyer County is going to have to sign off, acknowledging that we're ready to move forward with our funding side of the project, which, that has to go through finance, through the whole process. That's probably part of the reason why runway projects take so long, because that sum of money is hard to come by.
So that has to be in our 24 budget? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, actually, I'm not sure if it'll have to be in 2023. The project won't start, like the actual turning of dirt won't start until the spring of 24. But we may have to issue a statement of, financial capability to the Bureau in 2023 to move forward with the project. Lucky guy.
Okay. Any questions regarding that? Let's move on to letter C. Hangar lease update, discussion of possible action. So when we start this, I'll let Mr. Huff tell a little history where we're at, how we are at this point today.
Thank you. Just a little bit of review. We've been talking a lot about airports at Public Works Committee for a couple of years now, working through renegotiating the management agreement and the FBO agreements, the fixed base operator agreements for Hayward Aviation. And that took considerable effort on this committee's part, and we worked through that and got good agreements for both parties. So after that effort, we moved into taking a look at the hangar leases at the airport in conjunction with Derek, the manager, and Lynn, the county clerk, working through the existing hangar leases. So each of the hangars at the airport obviously has a piece of land that the county owns that they have a hangar on. So there's a lease that allows them to place that hangar and use that hangar on county property. So those leases are long-term leases. The leases in existence now are 20-year leases with a 10-year extension. Depending on when those leases started, they expire at various times. So there are some leases that have expired and have not been renewed, even though the hangar owners still use their hangars. They've been paying their lease payments, on a month-to-month basis on those hangars. But it became apparent that we, have some cleanup work that we want to do just to make sure that all those hangar owners are in good standing, and we've got valid leases, long-term leases on all of those hangars. So We've got a couple of different things going on. One that we're going to be talking about tonight are the existing hangar owners that have their 20-year lease expired, but did not notify us to extend the 10-year portion of the lease. So had we done a 10-year extension on those leases, they would still be in good standing with their existing leases. So when we get to letter D, those lease amendments that we're talking about, those are leases that the 20 years has expired, and we are going to extend the 10-year portion for the remaining portion of that lease, going back to the date that 20-year lease expired. So it's not a 10 years from today kind of existence, it's 10 years from the date the 20 years expired under the same terms and conditions as that original lease. That's our recommendation. To stay in good standing, a good faith effort of, had it been done at that date, it would have been the same thing. We'll recognize that. That's the recommendation before you today. So those are the things that are on the agenda under letter D. There are also leases that have either gone through their full 30 years or will very shortly. And so there was discussion last month about new terms for the new leases that have run through their 30-year lease period. And this committee decided on new terms for those new leases, 15 cents per square foot, $1,000 upfront, and a 10-year lease with a 10-year extension. That effort went to the county board for approval. County board decided, based on comments from hangar owners that wanted to have a little bit more conversation about it, the county board kicked it back to Public Works for further discussion. So you may hear some further discussion about either of those topics this evening from additional hangar owners. So that's kind of what's before you today, and I'll turn it over to Rebecca Broker, who is our legal counsel, who's been working through some of the legal ramifications of these leases and talk a little bit more in depth about what's before you this evening.
Thank you, Tom. After the meeting last month, we did get some comments back from the public and looked at different variations of issues or legal questions that had come into play with what I call the 3 buckets of leases. First bucket or category is the leases that are in good standing, don't need any action taken on them, nothing needs to happen. Bucket number 2 are the leases that have gone through their 20-year period. They are now into their 10-year extension period. And as Tom indicated, it's that bucket, that category of leases for which we have the amendments on the agenda under item D. Then the last category of leases are ones that have completely expired. Those are ones that have gone through their 20-year, gone through the 10-year renewal, and there's no valid lease in place. Those leases, the county's not taking any action on tonight. We can answer questions, but there's nothing, on the fully expired leases per se. Now, that being said, there has been some discussion last month, obviously with the resolution setting forth policy regarding the terms of the new leases. But just to make sure that everyone is on the same page, the amendments that you have in front of you do not incorporate the new policy terms. They do not change the rate. They do not change the term. They do not change any of those material items. They're simply bringing that lease up to date as if the right of extension had been properly exercised upon the expiration of the 20 years.
Okay, so how many are in bucket 1 in good standing? I see 9. It looks like 9 hangar leases are in bucket number 2 that have that 10-year extension.
Yeah.
And then how many are in bucket 3?
4 hangars, to my knowledge, are 30 years and gone.
Expired.
2 are going to set to expire this year, another the year after, another the year after, in 23. That's where the discussion really needs to happen, because the 30-year leases that were given out 30 years ago versus what is happening in our world today, that's where the review needs to be, not only from terms of length, rates, also different things like language for uses, different things like language for insurance requirements, because things have changed in 30 years. We're not ready, in my opinion, to draft that and have that prepared yet. We've done it with Hayward Aviation. Hayward Aviation just did one a few months ago. So that was a really good starting point, but that's not a perfect example because Hayward Aviation's hangar was FBO operations. They're going to be separate. I'll let Rebecca go.
I'm just, why wouldn't we work on the ones that are totally expired first, when those other ones are still, I mean, they're gonna go on to the 10-year, some, and then some are gonna be expiring in the near future, but then the ones that are totally expired, it just seems.
That's a very good question, and we did have that discussion. The most simple answer is the amendments are quick cleanups. This is something, the amendments are, say a quick fix, but it's something that can be accomplished without too much in-depth discussion of terms, because the terms are the same as the existing leases. And so in, talking with Derek as airport manager, he recommended that we take this bucket number 2 and just move them forward and get those 10 cleaned up. And then, as we do this, it's also could be a lockstep process of discussing terms for the new leases that have, completely expired, and then obviously leases that are going to be, up for renewal very soon.
So then these people that are totally expired, they continue, could be months.
Well, technically, if you are completely expired, so one of the 4, under Wisconsin law, you are a month-to-month tenant if you're still occupying the property. And those are the 4.
I know that they're in good standing.
Well, they're in good standing, but they technically don't have a lease.
Right.
Because it's completely expired.
And if I understood correctly what we talked about before, it's in their best interest to have a lease? Is that?
Without being their counsel, I'm going to say absolutely.
Okay.
Because otherwise, if they're a month-to-month tenant, the only protections they have are the basic ones in Wisconsin law. And
Again, the committee has already discussed terms for the new leases. You made that decision last month. That went to the board, came back here. If there's further discussion after hearing more comments. So it is something that has been discussed. We didn't take any action on pending, discussion from some of the hangar owners. So we're prepared to move forward on it. We just need direction. Thank you.
So the 4 expired leases that are now month to month, are they with the new rate, the 15 cents per square foot, or are you going off the old lease and just month to month that we make the new amendment?
Well, there's nothing but approved yet. So
They're the ones that are hanging on that decision.
I think the bills go out yearly for the taxes. They don't pay monthly, they pay once annually.
So is that a correct statement? They're the ones that are hanging on this decision-making process? Or is the 15 cents, $1,000 or something?
I think some folks tonight may want to speak towards that are on the line.
if I can comment too on the points that we talked about last month in terms of, the rates and, those policy points that the committee had developed and then went to the board. When we talked last month, we had done some research based on the information promulgated by Wisconsin Department of Transportation Bureau of Aeronautics. The BO, or otherwise called the BOA. The BOA puts out some very helpful information in their rates and charges sheets and other documents and materials that they have gathered in their research and work. So the rate that was discussed, or how that was formulated last month, was based on information from the BOA. Now, like any appraisal, you can take a baseline and then you have to adjust for the particular characteristics of your asset. So in the example of airports, you may look to surrounding airports and the rate per square foot is less or half than 15 cents. And that may be true, but that doesn't mean that the 15 cents that you've set is inappropriate or is disproportionate. What you have to look to are what the unique characteristics are of Hayward Airport, the airport that we have in Sawyer County in Hayward, and then adjust for those unique characteristics. Now, that's a lot of information, and rather than, I wanted to go right to the source. So what I did is I called David Green, who is the Bureau of Aeronautics Director, just because I know him from a previous life, just to make sure that the county was on track in terms of approaching this the right way and utilizing the numbers the right way, and so on and so forth. So he and I had exchanged phone messages, but again, that I reached out to him just to get that extra confirmation that the county was going in the right direction with respect to the rates. The other thing I did was just talk to some of our other real estate attorneys at our firm, particularly regarding the appraisal issue, because you can look to, surrounding airports for, what their square footage amount is, or price per square foot. But again, how do we accommodate for the unique aspects of Sawyer County's airport? And the folks that I talked to confirmed that yes, the county is going about this the right way. And so, when you get to the point of considering all of these different variations or adjustables, if you will, for the unique aspects of Sawyer County's airport, that's where your policy decisions come in, and you guys get to decide, as you did last month, what you feel based on all of that data the best rate is. Finally, in talking with some members of the public, I am always willing to look at additional data. If there are other numbers out there that BOA hasn't promulgated, or other information that would be useful to the committee and then the board in setting the rates, I always welcome that additional data. The data doesn't fit. So I haven't gotten any of that other than just some reiteration of the BOA materials that we've already used. Any questions on the rate analysis?
We do have a question from Mr. Olson. Mr. Olson, go ahead.
This is Dan Marcel. Can you hear me?
Yes, but just a minute, Dan. We're waiting for a phone number of Mr. Dale Olson.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't have everything on my screen. Do we have all the neighboring airports? We've been talking about it, but we don't have that data, right? For their price per square foot?
We have the data, but I don't have it, shorthand to be able to present to you tonight, but we have all that data.
Sure.
Mr. Olson, repeat that. You kind of broke up, my friend.
Yeah, so basically what I'm looking at is we compared to Middleton Airport, Middleton, Wisconsin last month, which I don't think that's not even reasonable. We were at 10 cents, we went to 15 cents. Obviously, over the course of 20 years in a lease, I don't think that's that much of an increase over a 20 or 30 year lease period. It was broached that we've gotten a lot of info tonight. I haven't. I don't think we've gotten significant information to make any different judgment than we did last month. And I'm ready to make a motion whenever anybody else is ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Does any other committee members have comments? Yes.
Gonna ruffle some feathers, but I think the current people need to realize there's a lot of people out there that, I mean, if we had the property, we could build more hangars and fill them, correct?
Yes, sir.
So they have to realize there's people who are kind of knocking on the door. So I think the extra little money that I believe is the correct route to go, as Rosen said, with all the information that you've been given and you gave to us, I think it's the correct way to go.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else in the committee have comments, thoughts? Hearing none. Cliff? Anything? Anything you want to share?
Mr. Chairman,
Just a minute, please.
I'll speak after you, Michelle.
Thank you. Mr. Marcel?
yes, thank you very much for recognizing me, Mr. Kinsley. Again, I'm here tonight speaking as a representative of the Hayward Hangar Owners and Pilots Association. As you may recall, I made comments at the last Board of Supervisors meeting about the same issues. For a moment while I was listening to external counsel talk, I thought she was a realtor. She was making a very good case of why we want to pay so much for the lease rate for our hangars. And Mr. Olson, thank you so much for asking the question about where the data is. In fact, I went to Hal Davis, the Bureau of Aeronautics compliance manager, who provided me with the underlying raw data that is compiled into the most recent 2019 Wisconsin Airport Survey of Rates and Charges, published in June of 2020. I eliminated those airports on the eastern half of our state and wound up with 20 other airports besides Sawyer County, stretching from Superior and Ashland down to Eau Claire. Let me tell you what those airports are made up of. Those 20 airports include one commercial airport, that's Eau Claire, two large general airports, New Richmond and Rice Lake, and then I believe 10 medium general aviation airports. This is the lingo used by the BOA, which includes Sawyer County, Ashland, Price County, Russ County, all the airports around us. And then the remaining 8 are classified as small general airports, examples of those being Cable Union and Shell Lake. And it's clear from that analysis that the proposed 15 cent per square foot lease rate is the highest of any of those, with the exception of Eau Claire's, which is the only commercial airport, probably within 100 miles of us, I might add, who is charging 1 cent more. In fact, my analysis showed that the proposed 15 cent rate is more than twice the average of all other lease rates at those 20 other airports, some of which I just mentioned. The analysis included New Richmond's airport's lease rate. New Richmond has 96 hangars compared to our 25 or 26. Their lease rate is only 10 cents, and they're an airport bordering on a large Twin Cities metropolitan area. You know, it may be one thing to offer hangar space, but if you don't have enough people wanting to use it, you can't charge a lot for it. But on the other hand, New Richmond isn't in that situation. They're bordering a potentially multi-million person population area. Don't tell me there isn't any demand for hangar space. And yet their lease rate is 1 cent, only 1 cent above the proposed, which again, ours being more than double. Now, I want to just remind everybody that if you decide that you can accept my argument, that's not the end of the world. you have terms in the existing lease that allow you to increase the lease rates periodically. I'm not suggesting you throw those over the side and forget about them. So we don't need to get to 15 cents tomorrow. Now, furthermore, let me move on, because one of the other things that the county administrator reminded us of earlier in the meeting is the lease origination fee, which is now $750. County is proposing it be increased to $1,000 for a new lease, as well as when a lease is amended. In discussions with your counsel, neither she or I could come up with an example of what an amended lease would be. So I ask you to delete any reference to this fee applying to an amended lease. It's unclear from any proposed resolution or motion passed so far whether this fee would be collected when an existing lease reaches the last date that its current terms are in effect, and whether this fee would apply to the new follow-on lease, even if the lessee remained the same. I ask that when a new lease is required in this circumstance, that you waive the origination fee. And finally, I have one other comment to make, also concerning the lease. The current ground lease contains a clause, which in my lease happens to be paragraph 16. The clause is titled Lease Transfer, and it says the current lessee may not transfer the lease to a third party without approval from the county, and that, quote, the lessor shall not unreasonably withhold such content. This is an important term in a hangar lease as it protects the lessee's hangar investment. I ask you to include this in any new hangar leases. Now, I understand that you may delay taking action tonight. That would be great, because I encourage you to take no action tonight, but rather delay consideration until your next meeting in April, before which you hold a public hearing to gather further testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else out there? Did you want to go next?
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna have Cliff go next. And then-
My name is Cliff Corn. I'm also
Step up to the desk with a microphone there.
My name is Cliff Corn. I'm the president of the Hayward Pilots and Hangar Owners Association. Dan and I have been working closely on these issues. One of the things that he did not mention, that is a concern for many of us, is supposedly there are 9 hangar leases, of which there is no documentation that the leases were transferred from the former lessee to the current lessee. I know in one case in particular, there is proof of that in the minutes of a meeting of the Airport and Property Committee, which that time precluded the Public Works Committee. That passed through, was approved, and the lease was to be signed by the current county clerk, Chris Mayberry. Those are facts and evidence in the minutes of the meeting. Yet the county claims there is no documentation for the transfer of that lease. I think there are many others of those 9, probably 7, that are in that same boat. Something needs to be done to correct those abnormalities, because the county is now claiming that
these leases may not be valid because there's no documentation of the transfer. I think that's the fourth bucket.
Mr. Help, you have a list of the ones he's talking about.
Rebecca and Derek do.
I'm gonna give that one to Derek because he's got the more.
Derek, you have a list of which ones he's talking about?
I do.
Thank you. Thank you. Shall we?
I don't know, maybe I must have missed that meeting, but don't believe I maybe just missed one since I've been on committee. When did you discuss or make this accusation, I guess you could call it, that these are not valid or whatever? I don't remember.
Mr. Helmy, that was, he's stating, before we redid the committees, this committee became Public Works and brought the airport, maintenance, and highway. Prior to that, the committees were set up different, and that's when Cliff was talking about. When they were set up different, there was an airport and properties committee, and that's the minutes he's talking.
Okay, but at the same time, when we redo these, or yeah, in a sense, redo these leases, those things are going to be taken care of. So I don't understand it even being brought up. I'm sorry.
That's right.
There seems to be no record, the county has no record of no documentation that the lease was transferred, even though the proper procedure was taken by the hangar leasee, the new hangar leasee, to the Airport and Property Committee that then told the county clerk to transfer the document.
I believe we can work through that.
Yeah, I believe so.
Well, there are 9 that need to be looked at.
We will do that.
I, of course, agree with what Mr. Marcel said in regard to the hangar area lease rate. And also the fact that there's no language in there to transfer a lease as is current. And I would also urge the county to take no action on the resolution that they had last month until we have time, sometime in April before the April meeting, to have a formal public hearing so that more input from other taxpayers and stakeholders can be made to the committee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can confirm that there are, that bucket of transfer of leases that is certainly a concern. One of the things that I've found since I've really stepped into this role of figuring out where every hangar area lease is at is that it's a reoccurring theme where I keep finding meeting minutes in reference to approvals like the one that Cliff was just talking about that are not in my files or the county's files as it pertains to that individual's hangar lease. And I think that that's happened 3 or 4 times now, where the hangar owner has supplied, meeting minutes about different things that were never entered into any official record for the hangar owner. So it's, at this time, I don't think the county is looking to try to do anything in that situation. I think that by doing what we're doing tonight, potentially in item D, it's going to clear up some of those concerns, if you will. Because really what it says in that document is that the onus, I think is the right word, is, the name of the hangar owner, the individual, is at the top. That is referenced who the original lease was, and then at the bottom, who signs for it, is the hangar owner who's currently paying. And number 5, I think it is, in the assessments, it says that, the guy who's signing it has the clear title of not only, having the title of the hangar essentially in his name, but also the organization, which might be signing on behalf of as well. So the onus, I believe, is on that individual, stating that he has the full authority to be able to enter into this agreement with Sawyer County. And I think that's where some of Cliff's concerns come in, because some of the leases that were approved to be sold or transferred from one owner to the other were not documented appropriately. So that might be where some of Cliff's concerns come in that process.
Mr. Howard.
One more. Well, what Cliff's saying here, this could have been easily resolved years ago. Brought that documentation into the county clerk and say, here, I have documentation that shows the transfer from him to him. Now the county has a copy. Then there is no question. Then your point is a moot point.
I think moving forward, we've already made some pretty good leaps and strides with this. And, you know, just me in conversations with all the hangar owners, you know, it's a, hey, show me what you got, essentially. And then I've been compiling all the information on my computer at the airport. And at the end of the day, I'm going to have a folder, and Tom has spoken of this quite emphatically. Part of the Hayward Aviation's contracted airport management job is going to be tracking these things and making sure that everything's done the way it's supposed to. That's where we're at in that process. So I think a lot of that is on me, just making sure that things are entered in a folder somewhere at the county and at my level as well, so everything's documented, you know, the way it should be. Like I said, those 3 or 4 occasions where documents have been provided to me that I haven't seen before, well, I've got them now.
You have a file on every lease, right?
Correct.
Every hangar?
Yeah, I do now. I never did, and we never have. The way it always had been done before was basically scanned in and put into a folder down at the clerk's office. Before Carol left, everything was just scanned in and sent to me before she left office.
We'll get through it.
Yeah, with respect to the actual text in the amendment, you know, there was a concern that the current tenant is not referenced. The current tenant is clearly referenced. The very top paragraph identifies the current tenant as lessee in each of the amendments. Now, if you jump down to the whereas, the third whereas clause, for ones that have an assignment that did occur, the amendments reference who the original lessee was. So when the lease was originally entered into between the county and a party, that original party is referenced. It is only referenced for sake of ease. If the county wants me to take that out, we can take it out. It is not, it doesn't have a legal bearing at all. And then Derek is correct that when you flip over to paragraph 5, this is a very standard provision in any sort of document like this, where the person who's signing on behalf of as the lessee, which they're clearly identified as such, makes a representation and warranty that they have authority to sign. This is not something extraordinary that the county is asking for, or that I put into this document to try to be tricky or slick. This is very typical. So I don't know if there's, you know, other questions with respect to that paragraph, or if there's other concerns about, you know, not properly identifying the lessee. I don't see how the lessee is not clearly identified in these amendments. It's right at the top.
Okay. Anybody else have a hand up?
Mr. Olson and then member of the public 25.
Mr. Olson, go ahead.
I don't know how we've gotten so convoluted in all this. So we talked about all the other airports and their costs. You know, we talked about Shell Lake. I think I landed at Shell Lake one time, and it's a grass strip. Grass. Not even commensurate with us. Derek mentioned Arborvitae is our closest, I don't want to say competitor, but the closest thing we have to what we have. I don't want to make anything convoluted, but at the same time, you know, we have to grow with expansion. We have to grow with our economics here. I don't think we're going to get there tonight, and I think we should make a motion, which I'm ready to do right now, to send to the county board our original motion and let the entire county board deal with it. And maybe we can get more information when we get there.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. I don't believe a motion necessary at this time because that is still standing and that can still move in front of the county board the way it was presented last month. We do have another person on the line that wants to comment.
Yes, Tony Fent, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, comment about the rental rate. You're going from 10 cents per square foot to 50% increase. The lease that I have clearly states any rate adjustment shall be reasonable and shall not exceed the average of the inflation rate during the preceding 5 years. Inflation rate for the preceding 5 years hasn't been above 2%, so it looks like you could do a 10% increase from 10 cents to 11 cents. Would be what would be complying with the lease that I have. And then I'm in the bucket that has an amendment on there. I'm Sawyer Aviation, and I have basically a following of how my lease moved. I came in 06, and we have a transfer that was submitted to Sandy Hebe, Deputy County Clerk, from the prior owner to Sawyer Aviation. And then when my 20-year lease was up, we also have minutes of the meeting, and then also a signed deal from Chris Mayberry accepting the transfer and the new lease. So I don't believe I should fall into the category of being out of date. My lease expires September 30th, 2021. And at that time, I'd like to renew. And I'd also like to see you do longer lease than 10 years. And the reason I say that, if you're thinking of expanding and getting somebody to put in a $100,000 hangar with only a 10-year lease, with a question of what that lease will look like in the future, I don't think you're going to have so many people building on that. The reason these hangars got built is because they guaranteed 20 years, and they also gave a 10-year addition. So then you can justify putting in a $100,000 hangar and knowing that you're going to be there a while. 10 years is a pretty short period of time. Nobody has a 10-year mortgage on their house, and that's basically what you're saying in one of these hangars. That's what I have to say. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for your comments.
I guess I have a comment, Mr. Chairman, if I could. I was just reading that motion from our minutes that we just approved, and it talks about a 10-year lease with a 10-year renewal term. So it's actually longer than what you're talking about. So you get a 10-year lease with an option to renew it again for another 10 years. Tom, how am I reading?
That's correct. That's what the motion that was adopted at the
So it's essentially a 20-year.
Yeah, 10 plus 10.
Right.
Yeah, the original leases were 20 plus 10.
But that, if I understand correctly, what that's saying, at 10 years, you can opt out. Or you can extend. That's. So I don't really understand.
And with that motion, sorry, Mr. Hoey, but with that motion, Tom, then you get a 10-year renewal term, and that's at the same rate and the same terms.
The same lease terms, yes.
Yeah.
So those individuals that are under a current lease, these new lease provisions don't apply to them until they need a new lease after the 30 years.
Right.
The full 20 plus 10 of the existing contracts. Once that expires, then they would be subject to any negotiation on new lease provisions. So the leases, some of the leases do contain an escalator clause, within the existing lease that, that 10 cents can go up. So some people are paying, 11 cents or, some decimal points past that. So there is an escalator clause, and we would expect that in future leases as well. Probably with language clarifying how that's calculated.
Okay. Do you have a comment?
In our current lease, it says, or the 10, 20 year, we're getting towards the end of a 10 year, 2 years left. Talked about, after 5 years of an extension, there's a chance to renegotiate the rate at halfway through your extension. Is that language that be in the new extension?
In the new extensions?
Yeah.
Yes, the extensions that we have tonight, yes. Whatever's in there, we're just gonna amend that to finish the 10-year lease that they're on. So if there's 2 years left, there's 2 years left.
Yep.
There's 8.
But when we re-sign,
A new one.
for 10 years, will we have year 5 of that extension have the chance to renegotiate our lease rates?
Yes.
So I've been messaging back and forth with Rebecca just now, or trying to kind of sort a couple things out. It seems like Mr. Olson's chiefest complaint is that we don't have the data that really is necessary. And I think that the big thing that, in talking with Tom, is that we haven't really received the direction from committee on how to move forward, essentially. And I don't want to step out of my lane, but it'd be really nice just to get directive from this committee to say, hey, spend the next month, look at every single one of the line items that would be in a new lease and make recommendations to us, for the next month, for you to then be able to make a motion. Or perhaps we could even draft, with Rebecca and Tom, draft a lease so that it could be on the agenda for the public to review, because if it gets pushed forward to the full county board, then the public comment periods really need, folks get 3 minutes over at the county board, and they really don't have an option or a venue to be able to come here as stakeholders at the airport to be able to discuss the terms. So there's terms in these contracts for a new hangar lease that we haven't even discussed here yet tonight. Things that need to be researched. Like I said, we're just not quite there yet because it is complex. Insurance requirements, different types of laws and regulations that have changed since 30 years ago. It's a broad category. So, if we were able to get directive to say, hey, review it, if Rebecca and I work with, agency like the Bureau of Aeronautics, trying to figure out where is that chart? What does it look like for different rates at different airports? And maybe then put a value on Sawyer County being special. I think that that's reasonable. I mean, I could act with that. I mean, I'd like to do my job in that regard, to work hard, to present to this committee what we feel would be appropriate. And we haven't got there yet.
Thank you. To answer your question, how long is your term up? Was your term up?
July of 23.
Right now, if it moved forward the way it is presented, in July 23, you can do a new lease, and that would be at the new specs that have been presented.
See, that was from, I think that's it.
Yep, in July of 23, when your contract is ended, and you're on a new lease, it hasn't been finalized here yet, but it looks like it would go at the new rate of $1,015, $1,000 renew and 15 cents.
Yep, and I understand that, but in our current lease, the original lease, that there's a paragraph in the rental rate, paragraph 3, it says that we renew for a 10-year extension, which is the extension we're in now. There's provisions that year 5 of that, which is passed, that rent could be potentially renegotiated. Is that provision going to be included in the new 10-year extension that you guys are working?
Well, I think the way I understand it, the new one is 10-year contract with a 10-year lease. So you're the ending years.
Okay.
And then going to a new one.
So there'd be a whole brand new lease then.
That's why I understand it.
Yeah.
Which hasn't been finalized yet. Does that help? Let's go. Did you have something else on that?
No, go ahead.
No.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
we talk about this stuff and we broached it for 2 months now. We talked about Arborvitae being our closest competition. Do we have the numbers from Arborvitae tonight?
we do have, I mean, we do have information that we've been looking at for the past 2 years. It's the information from the Bureau of Aeronautics that we used when we negotiated the rates on all the fees that Hayward Aviation is paying. So we did an extensive review of rates at that time and used that same type of information, the same information that Mr. Marcel is referring to as well. And it's on the Wisconsin DOT website. I pulled up the document, and we can send the link around so that you all can look at it. But you know, here within that document, they talk about the average in Wisconsin is 12 cents per square foot. That's over the the entire state on private hangars, and it also goes into the individual airports and the lease rates on those airports. So that's where these numbers are coming from. And the different rates at the different airports, and you can see, what various airports are charging. Private hangars at the airports.
So my question was,
pardon me?
do we have the numbers from
Mr. Chairman?
Arborvitae?
Yeah, we do. I just scrolled past it because I wanted to get to a different screen here, which has the private hangar availability. And here you can see that Hayward is one of the only ones, the northern part of the state that doesn't have any hangar availability left in it. I'll scroll back up to the question that you were asking.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
this is Dan Marcel. I'd like to make a comment, please.
Wait just a minute, please.
Thank you.
I just want one answer to my question. It's fairly simplistic because we've been broaching it for 2 months. Do we have the numbers from Arborvitae, which Derek says is our closest airport in Lake?
What's their code, Derek?
ARV.
I'm on the same website too, private ground lease rate.
4 cents.
It's color coded on their map. I could get the raw data with it.
It's 4 cents.
Where's he getting that?
I don't know.
Excuse me. Let us finish, please.
Yeah, jump in.
It's
EG.
ARV,
Yeah, it's here.
ARV, so it's the Lakeland Noble F. Lee Memorial Airport.
Derek, that is the airport you said is the closest related to us, correct?
I don't, it's a competitor to us. I don't know if it would be the perfect example for the closest one to us. There's other airports close to us that are pretty similar to us as well. When I referenced Arborvitae, I was saying more in a competitive sense as to the amount of people that are coming in and out of there versus the amount of people that are coming in and out of here. Hayward and Arborvitae are, arguably 2 of the bigger airports in the northern part of the state as far as flight volumes, especially business jet traffic.
Does that help, Mr. Olson?
No, it does not. I mean, if it is like us, I'm fully willing to accept what they're charging. But we have to have, because we had Middleton last time, which obviously is not even close. We have to have something closer that we can make a judgment on. Thank you.
Mr. Peter?
I guess I would like to move on to something else because I think we just need to have the data about what the surrounding airports charge so we can make a decision based on numbers rather than just impressions.
Didn't we have that last month?
I don't think so.
Well, we can send out the link, and you can look at these numbers and take a look at them yourself. The other thing I want to point out too, one of the public mentioned the taxpayers, and that's the portion that you're not hearing from today because they're not aware of what's going on here. But part of running an airport is retaining financial self-sustainability, and because we accept federal funding for our airport, we do have a responsibility to maintain a fee and rental structure that makes the airport as self-sustaining as possible under existing circumstances. So part of the rate structures that we have are to make up the $100,000 that the taxpayers are subsidizing the use of the airport. So the rate structure that we have, and this is what the process we went through in the Hayward Aviation negotiations are. We need more contributions from revenue from the airport operations as they happen. So those negotiations, we increased the fuel sales, fuel sale rate from 7 cents to 12 cents. We initiated other revenue sharing activities at in their FBO operation as an effort to maintain self-sustainability. We still got $70,000 that is funded by taxpayers. So should the hangar owners, the people that are using the airport, have a bigger burden to share, that's a policy decision that you can make. You can set the rate at 4 cents if you want to. You can set it at 20 cents if you want to. It's a policy decision on where you want that balance to be between how much revenue should come from users of the airport and users of the hangars versus the general taxpayers. And so, we can get you numbers and you can make that policy decision, which you did last month, but if you want to review it, we can get that information as well.
Mr. Hoff?
Yes.
This is all great, but we haven't been given any of this information for us to make a decision on. None of it. And it's frustrating to me. I think it's frustrating to the other committee members that we haven't been given that to begin with. So I would make a motion to postpone or delay, table, whatever you want to call it, until our next meeting. Any idea for tonight to make this decision? So I would. That's a motion. It's a motion. Thank you.
Mr. Olson, on your motion, are we talking about letter C, hangar lease update discussion, or are we talking about letter D, my friend?
The motion on the hangar leases, letter C.
Thank you.
I'll second that motion.
Okay.
And we can have a discussion.
There's a motion by Mr. Olson, second by Mr. Peters to postpone any action on letter C. Any discussion?
Can we vote this?
Discussion and then voting.
Okay.
Mr. Howard.
Now, we got to that number somehow, at 15 cents. We had to have data to get there. We didn't pull 15 cents out of our, what? Sorry. It didn't work that way. We sat down here at this table. I know, I didn't do it all the time. But we did. We sat around this table, looked at information, we took it all in like we always do. We don't make rash decisions on
I
this
agree.
committee. We never have. Look at how long it took to do with Derek. It took months. We don't make rash decisions. I'm sorry. So we looked at information, we made a decision, and we went forward. This we keep saying, just bugging me because everybody's saying, there's people here that are saying we didn't have information, we didn't have data. We had to.
If I may speak, I think we had data, but we seem to be getting conflicting information now as to where those data came from. So that are we looking at materials from outside our vicinity, or are we looking to our neighbors? And that's why I think we have to, if we aren't looking at the right data sets, then we were making an error. But if we did look at the right data sets, I'm ready to go with the $1,000 renewal fee and the 15 cents per square foot.
Well,
Mr. Chairman?
Just a minute, Mr. Bissonnette's next.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, the one thing that stuck out to me was when Mr. Fent read the provision in his lease about the increases. Now, without having read these leases, I just hope that, and I'm fine with the 15 cents, but I don't want us to be in a situation where we're basically in violation of the lease ourselves. And so that's the kind of information I'd like to see.
Thank you. Mr. Olson?
Just a couple of things. Number one, in that lease that Mr. Fent cited, is that annually or is that over the life of the contract? Because obviously in a 10-year or a 20-year contract, it's much different than 1 year. I think that has to be reckoned with. But my question about Arbor Vitae, one airport that was brought up was never, I'm sorry, I forget the name of the airport owner, the lease owner. He said 4 cents, and that may well be true, but why can't we come up with that? It was a question I broached, and we can't answer it. So if we can't answer that now, that's why my motion will stay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Schuman?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just have a couple things to add here, and I was here at the last meeting where we decided on the 15 cents, and Mr. Olson made that motion then. And one very concrete piece of data is that in following Mr. Hoff's comments, is the airport sustainable? Are the taxpayers supplementing the airport? And the answer to that is yes, right? So we looked at that, and we have other things in our budget that we really need to take care of instead of cutting services. So how do we get there without making the airport closer to sustainable, right?
Without?
No, with.
With, okay.
Yeah. The less money we have to feed to the airport to keep them running, the more money we can put into mental health, behavioral health, other health and human services that really need our support. So that's why, I'm in favor of this. And I don't know where things have changed now, but I look at the budget very closely. So I know that. Thank you.
Mr. Morrell?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
This is Dan Russell. Thank you for recognizing me. Mr. Schuman, I'd like to respond to your concern, and I really appreciate what you said. The one thing that I've been puzzling over since my relationship with Hayward is what is the economic benefit that this airport is bringing to the county? And my understanding is there's yet to be a formal study done to quantify that. And so although it may appear that the county has to fund the airport, perhaps there are other economic benefits that far exceed that funding. I don't know that for sure, but that's one comment. Now I'd like to move on and just respond to Mr. Olson's comments. Arbor Vitae Airport is 72 nautical miles. That's a little over 80 statute miles from Hayward. It's got 2 paved runways, over 3,000 and over 5,000 feet. And yet I don't believe their lease rate is anywhere near what we're proposing. Furthermore, setting volume aside, and I did hear Derek mention that as one consideration, which I accept, you can look at airports within 50 nautical miles. Ashland and Bong Field up in Superior immediately come to mind, which have 2 paved runways and would seem to be, albeit maybe questionable in terms of the amount of traffic. Derek probably has those figures, I don't, might be more comparable. Now, finally, what I'd like to try to help Mr. Olson with and the rest of the committee is I'll be happy to share the raw data that Mr. Olson is looking for, and I think some other members may want to see as well, that I got directly from the Bureau of Aeronautics. If you don't trust me to be the source, call up Hal Davis, ask him for the raw data, not the summary data that Mr. Hoff showed, because that ends up grouping data in ranges, which can be misleading. Do your own analysis of the raw data, and I think you'll come up with the answers that will make that will answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
I've got one comment on what just transpired. And I'll touch you off.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to postpone letter C, hangar lease update discussion possible. We're gonna vote, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
No,
Aye, sorry.
It's all right. Opposed? Mr. Peters, what's,
he said yes.
I said yes.
okay, that's sorry.
We have
I'm
3 ayes,
the
1
only
no.
opposed.
Pardon?
3 ayes, 1 no.
3 ayes, 1 no. Yes.
He's not voting.
So motion carries to be postponed. So with that, which is fine, I'd like to have it on the agenda again next month. Let's see if we can bring some more material to show the committee so we can make our decision. Okay?
Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman,
Yes,
can we be more specific?
go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to see neighboring communities, their exact rental rate, their exact lease agreements, how long they are. You know, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can plagiarize. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Why are we struggling with this? And our owners of our leases, I applaud them. I'm glad they did it. At the same time, times change. Things get more expensive, maybe less expensive. We don't know. But we need to have something to go off of. I think that's very, very important. And we haven't had that in 2 meetings. So can we just have, you guys pick 2 airports. I don't care which ones they are. Pick 2 airports and just get their lease agreements and their rental rate. And I will acquiesce to the rest of the crowd. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Okay, that takes care of letter C. Letter C. Letter D is just the amendments to extend these out to finish their term of the 10-year, whether they got 2 years in or 5 years in, whatever that, to finish the 10 years. So we can get these so-called locked up for now. Except for the letter A. I understand we want to pull letter A up. We'll do that one separate.
May I? I'm in full support of doing all of these. B through I think it's in the best interest of the county to move forward with this. The one is letter A, and I'll say it. I've said it at this committee before. I am not in favor of taking any action on that hangar owner or that hangar's facility. I just can't recommend it because there's some outlying issues that Rebecca could speak to as well from a legal perspective that are, help me out.
Sure. So with respect to I'm gonna make sure I say it right, Shade lease amendment. As Derek indicated, it's believed that there may be a violation of lease terms that really has nothing to do, it's a use term. It has nothing to do with like what the other issues we're talking about today. So The committee can not take action on that lease amendment if it so chooses. If you want to take action on that lease amendment, you can, because there's a provision in the amendment that doesn't waive any other breaches of the lease, i.e. the county is preserving any right to take action on that underlying breach. But that being said, I would defer to Derek though, if he feels like it's the cleanest way to pull that one and give attention to the other underlying violations, then that, from a legal perspective, that's fine. That's up to the committee.
So the leasing is in breach. It's not the county.
Correct.
Potentially.
Okay.
So
thank you.
that-
I don't want
The caution would be,
accusations here.
perhaps, this gets sorted out and, my hand gets slapped and yes, in the middle of the night, this hangar owner is doing the things that I don't think he's doing. Then all of a sudden, this same document may come back to this committee again in the preceding months for us to do what we could have just done tonight in the first place. Because if we do go through this process with this individual and, it comes to light that the use and the terms are being violated of his hangar lease, this document doesn't get them out of that.
Are we aware of these indiscretions?
Mm-hmm.
Is it the one that has?
It's been an ongoing issue. There's been correspondence at this committee in reference to the hangar owner as well as my conversation.
Given numerous letters. Too,
Not,
correct?
well, that's a different one. This is a new one that's kind of come up. There's two that are questionable. This one in particular is a new one. Never has the county board ever sent anything to, or no one has ever sent anything to this individual questioning the use of the hangar. And I think that's where Tom and I kind of need to have some direction. We've worked with court counsel in the past. We have sent out a letter referencing issues that airport management has perceived as a violation of the contract. And I think that we're at the point now where we're ready to draft another letter, essentially coming from me as the airport manager saying, I keep talking. Holy smokes.
You're doing your job with the job.
So, this committee certainly could approve A through I tonight. If A gets approved, it's not going to have any recourse or decision as to what potentially could happen, because if there's going to be issues, it's not going to be because of this 10-year extension. It's going to be because of something else. So maybe it's best just to get it off the list.
Do we have to do another one? I make a motion to approve A through I under 7D. The hangar lease amendment. I'm sorry?
That's what he said. That's what he said.
Yes, A through I.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Mr. Howick, second by Mr. Peters to approve the amendments, finish off their contract, whatever the 10 years is. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. A lot of interesting discussion. This shows we have a lot to learn and we continue to learn. Thank you for your patience.
Thanks for your time. I have to go fuel an airplane and I have to go home.
Thanks, Derek.
Moving on, number 10, courthouse remodel update. We have some information there. Mr. Pump, you want to give us a little one?
Yeah, you should be logging back in if he hasn't already. With regard to the courthouse addition and remodeling, I think we asked a question, I forget what committee I'm in, California Avenue, as far as them working on that. The city is doing that work and letting that contract, so that work will begin this spring. And it has to be done, I believe, within, I want to say 60 days after they start. That might not be the right time frame, but it is a short time frame. They will have that done this spring. And while that's happening, we're continuing to work with John Kane at Venture Architect on planning not only the layout of the building, but also working with him on the RFP, the request for proposal that will be let for the contractor that will be doing the work. As we recall, we're looking at a contract or a construction manager at risk type arrangement, and John Keane explained that last time. He can do so again if you've got questions. But they would be the main contractor, and then letting out the subcontracts at their discretion over our overarching purview. So Mr. Kane, I believe, has some information. Is he on yet? He's calling on. He's on right now. Okay. Technical difficulties.
So while we're waiting for Mr. King to get on, they're also looking at putting together a request for proposed construction manager at risk contract with hiring of them. And when I look at this, it would come to the Public Works to hire construction manager. Is that correct?
We can use that, yes. That is your intention. That can be done. So the RFP, we would have probably 3 or 4 bidders is what we're expecting. We've had interest from contractors interested in the project, and they're asking questions. So we expect to get some competition for this, and we would need to pick one. Then it won't be solely on price. It'll be experience and whatnot. As normal is done in an RFP process. And so that selection can be the Public Works Committee if you're so inclined to do it that way. And then that gets the ball rolling for further planning, engineering, and all that other fun stuff that happens next.
Do you think finance could have a say in that along with Public Works?
Well, they'll have to approve the dollar amount that Public Works picks.
There you go.
Also,
I like it, Chairman.
Yeah. Also, Mr. Kane has a little map there.
I'm on.
There it is.
All right.
All right.
I love technology.
Mr. Kane, I don't know how much you heard. I did give a brief introduction on where we're at in the process as far as the construction that the city's doing. That we're working on an RFP for the construction manager, and you're working on some other details on layout and whatnot, but I'll let you pick it up from there, and then we can discuss further.
Okay. Can you take me up to the memo page? Maybe have you covered all of this?
Nope.
Sounds like okay. Well, good evening, everyone. You've had a long meeting. I'll try to be brief. I'll just go right down the list here. We've drafted a RFP for construction manager, and Tom and Rebecca have that document. They're looking it over, and some of your other staff have been reviewing it as well. I would like to try to get it out sometime next week if we can. Tom, I'll give you a list of names of construction managers that you would want to send it to, and I know you'll have it. It'll be probably on the local newspaper as well. There are probably some requirements that you have to follow in terms of its advertisement.
Yes.
So we'll do that. We sent you our draft contract this afternoon late to you and Rebecca. So you have a chance to look that over. I'll cover the site survey and soil borings at the same time. These are things that we'd like to get started here real soon. Our engineering crew, Harvard Engineering, their in-house engineers, are going to be developing an RFP for each one of those items. There was some discussion about possibly having Don, your county surveyor, do the work, but I've talked with him, and it's really more than what he's capable of doing, the kind of information we're looking for. So I do have some names that I'm starting to collect, both with the site survey and the soil borings. We would like to begin to think about doing some courtroom touring. The key element of this project is the courtroom. And the item that will probably be of most interest to the judge, at least, will be his bench and its layout. And so I think over the course of the next month or so, would like to work with the judge, and then Christopher Channing, our court administrator, doing some touring. I'm thinking at the very least we'd probably do Barron and Polk County, but want to talk with them about what might be appropriate. And there may be others, some of you maybe in fact might want to tour as well, just to become better informed. So I'll keep that window open for you all. Schedule. What I noted here is we'd like to begin the project with the construction manager in attendance. I think they would appreciate that. I've put together a schedule, and I think even with that, that process that's going to take some time to bring them on board, that might mean that the actual project, the work that due diligence, I mean the hard work, would begin in mid-May. There's a schedule that I put together, and that would give us a chance to bid the project in early 2022, and then start construction in the spring of 2022. So I think I am looking for your guidance or approval in that regard, to not really start in earnest until we have the construction manager on board. Are you comfortable with that?
We don't have a choice, do we?
No, I don't think so. Well, I mean, we can start now, but I think we'd be well into the project, and then the construction manager would come, and they wouldn't be happy, and they'll feel like they've been left out. There are some cost estimates that we would like for them to do, and one of them is about 3 weeks into the actual project. And so if we started now on the project, we'd be well beyond that point. And so this would be my recommendation, if you're all good with that.
Mr. Helwig?
I'm just curious, what will be the time frame of getting that construction manager on board?
As soon as we can get the RFP out, there are probably some requirements in terms of how much time they have to be able to put the proposal together. And then there'll be a period of time where you will want to review those proposals. You'll shortlist, though I suspect there'll probably be a small handful of companies. Market & Johnson, for example, Myron are two companies that have expressed great interest in the project. Kraus Anderson is a firm out of the cities that might want to be interested as well. I have drafted the RFP in such a way that we would hopefully get some qualified construction managers, people that are familiar with this kind of a building project. So the award wouldn't really happen until early May. I think we want to give them enough time to submit the proposal, have you an opportunity to review them, and then interview. So I think the schedule is fairly reasonable in that regard. I could put together a more detailed schedule of those dates. In fact, I think they're actually, Tom, in the RFP that we put together.
Yes.
So that could be shared with the members of the committee at some point here soon. Tom, I would like to get that RFP out this next week, if at all possible.
I hear that.
Okay.
Yes, Rebecca is here and has started to review it. We'll get with her and get something back to you here this week.
Okay, good. You started going through the attachments briefly. I think you've seen this from Tom, one of your presentations, and just very briefly, the red line, the outline, is the new construction, the courtroom and all the related functions, the jury deliberation, judges' chambers, etc. We're talking about reconfiguring the existing courtroom. I think that was an excellent idea that the sheriff had. Some of the other colors that you're seeing, the yellow represents the courtrooms. The red is an important corridor because that's where the inmates or offenders come from the jail to both courtrooms. They kind of snake their way around the new construction. We have budgeted a new Assembly County boardroom that you can see on the plan. what I'm seeing on the screen is kind of cut off at the bottom, but there you go. And then a new lobby space. So I think it's an excellent floor plan. So that's kind of a quick rundown of that.
Mr. King? Mr. King?
Yes.
This is Ron Kinsley. The key for the letters P, K, S, I seem to be missing that.
What do they mean? K would be kitchen. S would be storage. If we go over to the left of that, G would be the gallery of the courtroom. V is a vestibule. The C's are conference rooms. If I go, yeah, there are two conference rooms to each of the courtrooms, rooms that you don't have now. If I go, let's go back to the original courtroom in that area. The JD, or either plan JD, is the jury deliberation. T's are toilets. The J, a little further up, is the judge's chamber. We have some offices, the court reporter and the clerk. Some of that is pretty up in the air. I'll be honest with you. The H's are holding cells. Sure, those two holding cells would be specific to the new courtroom, and then the sheriff would like to have a couple holding rooms that would be fashioned out of space in the existing jail facility. Those
Sir?
are inmates. Yes.
Has the judge looked at this?
No, he has not.
Okay, I mean, isn't that kind of a thing we should look at?
Oh, most definitely, yes. I
I
mean,
mean, we're putting the cart before the horse, because I've honestly, I've never been a judge, and I don't know what it would take. I think it would be really important to have his input.
oh, most definitely. And I completely agree with you. I mean, we could certainly begin that process by finding a time to review this with the judge, but from my perspective, it's really a placeholder for us at this point. We've developed the diagram so we could put together a budget. You know, I think the pieces are generally in their right location, and they do follow what we had done previously. So we haven't really deviated too much from that plan, to be perfectly honest. I think what he probably will not have seen before would be the reconfiguration of the existing courthouse, or rather courtroom.
He has
But-
seen that as well.
Pardon?
He has seen that as well. We did forward that information to him.
Yeah, and would be happy to talk with him. And I can reach out to the judge this next week.
I would make a recommendation that when you reach out to the judge, I would have the sheriff sitting side by side and save a lot of time and get it done with. And Mr. Channing knows that there's statutes to follow, so I'm not concerned about him, because I don't see him chipping in the state.
Who's Mr. Chairman? I was gonna ask that.
That's
question.
his.
Oh. As far as the judge
He's
goes,
the district administrator. Yeah.
He's still not chipping in.
we want to make sure that we don't let him just run free for as I want.
That's why I want them there together.
Yeah.
No, the spaces that you see in the room have all been agreed to, the sizes. And, you know, generally speaking, in as much as the state has this, what's called SCR 68, that sets guidelines for the size of the judge's chamber and the courtroom, et cetera. We've come to terms some time ago that we're basically following, for the most part, what you currently have. The new judge's chamber will be the same size as what he's got now. The courtroom will be the
More like a waterfall on his wall in his judge's chambers.
I'm sorry, I can't hear. I can't hear you. Go ahead. Say that again.
Good point.
Continue on, Mr. King.
Your voice is garbled. I apologize.
Continue on, sir. Thank you.
Okay. I know there'll be many opportunities for us to be in person. So much easier. So Tom, if you want to slide down to the next slide, if you could for a minute. I don't know if you can reorient that, rotate it. Oops, couple more times. There we go. We've actually gone ahead and started creating what we call a three-dimensional model of the campus. So you see this kind of brown thing off to the left. The resolution's not very good. We've changed some of the colors. That's the existing courthouse. And then, of course, the white box is the jail. And so as we begin to develop some design ideas for this, we'll actually be modeling the new project within this model. So what you'll actually be able to see are some real three-dimensional images of the project as it develops. Of course, we'll have floor plans as well, but I think the ability to see what this would look like from the street, from other angles, I think will all be of great benefit to all of us as we develop the design. So this is just sort of a teaser, if you will, at this point in time. So that's about all I had for this evening. I don't know if you have any other questions.
I don't hear any, and I thank you for taking time to explain the things for us.
Okay. Well, very good.
Thank you.
You all meet every 2 weeks, is that right?
Yes, we meet once a month.
Once a month. Okay. Well, I'm happy to do these updates. Tom, we can coordinate those.
Yeah, John, just, a question may come up. We had some discussion earlier on cost rising in construction. Are we concerned at all about these massive increases we're seeing in the construction industry and how that may affect the budget that we're looking at today?
Well, I think that's an excellent concern. We're hearing that steel prices have gone up quite a bit. Mechanical equipment is gone up. I mean, there's this pent up demand. We do have some contingency in the budget. It's important, as I alluded to earlier, that once we get the construction manager on board, we want them to put together an estimate of what they believe the construction costs to be at this time, with a bidding in over the winter and construction in the spring. So I'm anxious to see that cost estimate. It is a concern. No, there's no question about that.
Mr. Kane, I see that when we do go to interview the construction manager, I would anticipate we'll probably have to have a special meeting here.
Yes.
So we don't have to worry about the once a month to fit it in on that. All right, very good. Thank you.
Okay. Have a good evening, folks.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Bye.
Any further questions?
Yep. Bye.
Okay. Moving on, number 11, future agenda items. Well, we're gonna have airport hangars on for next month for sure.
And this will be on here.
Yeah, this will be. Any other thoughts? I'm sure that the administration has the knack of bringing other things to our attention that we need to take care of, which is okay.
Well, one thing I think I'd add, Mr. Chairman, is let's have the portion of our budget that shows what we are supplementing the airport at. Just so everybody on the committee has an idea what that is.
Very good point.
We do that every year, whatever.
Yeah, it is good.
That's
I like it. I just have a question on what we just heard from Mr. King. Did we do this backwards as far as the manager and what we just approved for the $8 million? You know what I'm saying? Because he's gonna come and give us
he knows
a number.
He knows what the budget is. Okay. He has to fulfill it.
So you gotta go below that 8. We're giving you this.
And Mr. Kane and I think Mr. Huff was involved, and they know ballpark price what we have to pay that person. Depending on experience. And that's, where did I get this from? I'm sure I came to you.
Yeah.
All right. We'll be sharing more information as we get it. Anything else? Meeting adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bisnett. Thank you, Mr. Olson.
All right, go. Let's keep going.
Thank you, everybody. Be careful.
Yeah, you too.